My name is Thomas, and I am 58 years old. I've been a builder my entire life. I build houses, I take a piece of empty land, a set of blueprints, and I create something tangible, something real, a place for a family to live, to grow, to make memories. I've always taken immense pride in my work. I'm good at it. I'm a master of my craft. But I recently came to the devastating realization that while I was busy building houses for other families, the foundation of my own was cracking. I have a son, Daniel. He's 30 years old. He's a good man, a hard worker, a loyal friend. And until a few months ago, I thought we had a great relationship. We talk, we laugh, we go to ball games. But a simple, innocent question from my grandson, Daniel's 5-year-old son, shattered that illusion. He asked me, "Grandpa, what did Daddy want to be when he grew up?" And I opened my mouth to answer, and nothing came out. I had no idea. In 30 years, in countless conversations, in a lifetime of fatherhood, I had never once asked my son about his dreams. I had spent 3 decades talking to him about my dreams for him, about the business I was building for him, about the future I had designed for him. But I had never, not once, asked him about his own. And in that moment, with my grandson looking up at me with wide, expectant eyes, the full weight of my failure as a father crashed down on me. I am here today to tell you how I became a man who knew how to build a house but had forgotten how to build a relationship with his own son. I was a man with a plan, a simple, straightforward, and, in my mind, noble plan. I had started my construction business from scratch, with nothing but a pickup truck, a set of tools, and a relentless work ethic. I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into building it into one of the most respected residential construction companies in the state. And my plan was that one day my son Daniel would take it over. It was a beautiful plan, a legacy, a father and son business. It was the American dream, and I never for a moment considered that it might not be his dream. From the time he was a little boy, I was grooming him to be my successor. I didn't do it with pressure or with anger. I did it with love, with enthusiasm, with a genuine belief that I was giving him the greatest gift a father could give his son, a future. When he was a kid, I would take him to job sites. I would let him help me measure boards. I would teach him the names of the tools. I would show him how a house comes together from the foundation to the roof. He was a good kid. He was eager to please. He would listen patiently, his little face serious with concentration. I mistook his compliance for passion. I saw his desire to please me as a desire to follow in my footsteps. I remember when he was in high school, he had to do a career day project. He came to me and said he was thinking about doing his project on being a musician. He had started playing the guitar and he was getting pretty good. He loved it. He would spend hours in his room figuring out songs, writing his own little melodies. The old me, the me from some of the other stories you might hear, the me who was a carpenter or a fixer, might have dismissed it. But I was different. I was a builder. I saw it as an opportunity. I said, "That's great, son. A hobby is a wonderful thing. But for the project, why don't you do it on the construction business? I can help you. We can make a great presentation. It'll be an easy A." I wasn't being malicious. I genuinely thought I was helping him, guiding him toward the smarter choice. I was so blinded by my own dream for him that I couldn't see that his was trying to peek through. He did the project on the construction business. He got an A. And he played his guitar a little less after that. The questions I asked him were always, in retrospect, a form of gentle, loving indoctrination. "Isn't it amazing, Daniel, to see something you've built with your own hands? Can you imagine one day this will all be yours? Think of the life you'll be able to provide for your family." I was selling him a future that I had designed, that I had built, that I was now offering to him as a gift. And what son, what loving, dutiful son, would refuse such a gift? What son would look his father in the eye and say, "Thanks, Dad, but I have my own dream"? So he went along with the plan. He worked for me in the summers. He went to college and got a degree in business because I told him that was what he would need to run the company. He was a good student, a hard worker. He never complained. He did everything I asked of him. And I was so proud. I saw my dream taking shape right in front of me. I saw the future I had so carefully designed becoming a reality. I was a master builder, and my son was my greatest project. After he graduated, he came to work for me full-time. He was good at it. He was smart. He was responsible. He was good with the clients and the crews. But there was something missing, a spark, a fire. He was competent, but he was not passionate. He was present, but he was not engaged. I noticed it, but I dismissed it. I told myself he was just young, that he was still learning the ropes, that the passion would come with time and experience. I didn't want to see the truth, that he was a man living someone else's life. He was the lead actor in a play that I had written, and he was delivering his lines perfectly, but his heart wasn't in it. The moment of reckoning, the moment the carefully constructed house of my assumptions came crashing down, was, as I said, a few months ago. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was at Daniel's house playing with my grandson, Leo. We were building a tower out of Legos, and Leo, in that innocent, unfiltered way that kids have, asked me, "Grandpa, what did Daddy want to be when he grew up?" And I froze. It was such a simple question, but it was a question that laid bare the profound and devastating ignorance at the heart of my relationship with my son. I searched my mind. I scrolled through 30 years of memories, 30 years of conversations, and I came up empty. I knew his favorite baseball team. I knew his favorite food. I knew the names of his best friends. But I did not know the answer to the most fundamental question a father can ask his son. What is your dream? I stumbled. I said something vague about how he always loved helping me on the job sites. But Leo, being 5, is a persistent interrogator. He said, "But what did he want to be? A fireman, an astronaut, a rock star?" And I had to look my grandson in the eye and say, "You know what, Leo? I don't know." I never asked him. The look on Leo's face was one of simple, childish confusion, but for me, it was a moment of brutal, soul-crushing clarity. I was 58 years old, and I did not know my own son. I had spent his entire life talking, and I had never once thought to listen. I had been so consumed with my dream for him that I had never made space for his own. I had been a monologue in a relationship that should have been a dialogue. That evening I went home and I couldn't sleep. I was haunted by that question. What did Daniel want to be? I thought back to his high school project, the music, the guitar. Had that been it? Had he dreamed of being a musician, a rock star? And had I, with my gentle, loving, well-intentioned guidance, crushed that dream before it ever had a chance to take flight? The thought was a physical pain, a tightness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. The next day, I did the scariest thing I have ever done in my life. I called my son and I asked him to lunch. We sat in a quiet diner, the kind of place we had been going to for years. And I didn't talk about work. I didn't talk about the business. I took a deep breath and I said, "Daniel, Leo asked me a question yesterday, and I was ashamed that I didn't have an answer. He asked me what you wanted to be when you grew up, and I realized that in all these years, I have never once asked you. So I'm asking you now, what was your dream? What did you want to be?" He looked at me, and for a long moment he was silent. And in that silence, I saw a flicker of the boy he used to be, the boy who was hesitant to share his heart for fear that it would be dismissed or redirected. But then he took a breath, and he told me. He told me that he had dreamed of being a teacher, a history teacher. He told me about his high school history teacher, a man who had made the past come alive for him, who had taught him to think critically, to see the world in a new way. He told me that he had loved the idea of doing that for other kids, of sparking that same curiosity and passion in them. He told me that he had even, secretly, looked at colleges with good education programs. But he had never told me, because he knew what my dream was for him, and he didn't want to disappoint me. And as I listened, I felt a profound and terrible grief. I grieved for the teacher my son might have been. I grieved for the students whose lives he might have changed. And most of all, I grieved for the 30 years I had spent with my son, and the fact that I was only now, at 58, learning the most fundamental truth about him. I had been so busy building a future for him that I had completely missed the person he was and the person he wanted to be. I started to cry, right there in the middle of the diner. I just sat there, with tears streaming down my face, and I said, "I am so sorry, Daniel. I'm so sorry. I was so caught up in my own dream that I never made space for yours. I'm so sorry." And my son, my good, kind, and compassionate son, reached across the table and put his hand on mine, and he said, "It's okay, Dad. I'm happy. I have a good life. I'm proud of the business we've built. It's a different kind of teaching, in a way. I teach young guys the trade. I help families build their homes. It's a good life." And I knew that he meant it. He had made his peace with the path he had taken. He had found a way to make it his own, but I had not. I was left with the ghost of the man he might have been, and the knowledge that I was the one who had stood in his way. I was left with the question that will haunt me for the rest of my days. What if I had just asked? This is the danger of having a plan for your children. It is the danger of loving your dream for them more than you love them. It is a subtle, insidious, and often well-intentioned form of blindness. You are so focused on the destination that you don't even see the person who is on the journey with you. You are so busy talking that you forget to listen. You are so busy building their future that you forget to ask them about their dreams. So I am telling you this, as a man who is learning to see his son for the first time. Ask the question. Ask it often. Ask it with genuine curiosity. What are you dreaming about these days? What are you passionate about? If you could do anything in the world, what would it be? And then, listen. Listen with your whole heart. Listen without an agenda. Listen without trying to steer them back to your own plan. Just listen. And when they tell you their dream, no matter how impractical, no matter how different from your own, fan it, nurture it, celebrate it, because their dream is a precious, sacred thing. It is the purest expression of who they are. And your job as a parent is not to replace it with your own. Your job is to be its first and most passionate believer. I am learning to be a believer in my son's dreams, even the ones that are now just ghosts. I am learning to ask him about his life, not just his work. I am learning to be a dialogue partner, not a monologue performer. It is a slow, humbling process. But it is the most important work I have ever done. It is the work of tearing down the house I built for him and instead helping him to build his own. And my only regret is that I didn't start sooner. Don't make my mistake. Ask the question, and then, for the love of God, just listen. Let's dissect this failure of mine, because it's a common trap. It's the trap of the good provider. I defined my fatherhood primarily through my ability to provide. I provided a nice house, a good education, a secure future. I was so focused on the what of providing that I completely neglected the who I was providing for. I saw my son as the beneficiary of my hard work, and I assumed that the best thing I could do for him was to give him the fruits of that labor, a successful turnkey business. It was a gift, and a generous one at that. But it was a gift that came with a hidden price tag, his own dreams. I was providing for his future, but I was starving his soul. This is a particularly insidious trap for fathers, I think. We are conditioned by society to see our worth in our work, in our ability to build, to provide, to protect. And we often translate that directly into our parenting. We see our children as our most important project. And we apply the same principles of management, strategy, and goal setting that we use in our professional lives. We create a business plan for their lives, complete with 5-year goals, quarterly reviews, and key performance indicators. But a child is not a business, a family is not a corporation, and a relationship is not a project to be managed. It is a mystery to be explored, and I was a manager, not an explorer. I was a benevolent dictator of his future. My dictatorship was not one of force, but of love. It was a gentle, persuasive, and constant stream of messaging that all pointed in one direction: the business. Every conversation, every piece of advice, every shared experience was, in some small way, a sales pitch for the future I had designed. I was the world's most effective lobbyist, and the only client I was lobbying for was my own dream. Think about the power dynamic in that relationship. I was the father, the provider, the boss, the man who held the keys to his future. He was the son, the employee, the apprentice, the beneficiary of my generosity. How could he possibly, in that dynamic, have come to me and said, "Dad, thank you for everything, but I want to be a history teacher"? It would have been an act of profound rebellion, a rejection of everything I had worked for, a betrayal of the unspoken contract that had defined our relationship. So he did what most good, loving children do. He chose to please his parent. He chose to be dutiful. He chose to silence his own dream in order to honor mine. And I, in my blindness, accepted his sacrifice as a sign of his commitment. The grief I feel now is not just for the teacher he might have been. It is for the man I never knew. For 30 years, I had a relationship with a version of my son, a carefully constructed persona that was designed to win my approval. I had a relationship with the good son, the hard worker, the heir apparent. But I did not have a relationship with Daniel, the man who loved history, the man who dreamed of inspiring young minds, the man who played the guitar in his room and wrote his own songs. I did not know that man. And the tragedy is that I was the one who had made it impossible for him to exist in my presence. So, what is the antidote to this kind of loving, well-intentioned blindness? It is curiosity, a genuine, open-hearted, and agenda-free curiosity about who your child is, separate from you. It is the practice of asking questions not to guide, not to teach, not to correct, but simply to understand. It is the practice of seeing your child not as a project to be completed, but as a story to be read. And you cannot read a story if you are the one who is constantly trying to write it. I am learning, late in life, to be a reader of my son. I am learning to ask questions and then to shut up and listen. I am learning to be fascinated by the person he is, not just proud of the things he does. I am learning to see the world through his eyes, to understand his passions, to respect his choices, even if they are not the ones I would have made. It is a process of unlearning a lifetime of habits. It is a process of dismantling the ego of the good provider and embracing the humility of the curious explorer. And it is a process that is bearing fruit. Our conversations are different now. They are deeper, richer, more honest. I am learning about his frustrations with a difficult subcontractor, yes, but I am also learning about his passion for sustainable design, about his dream of one day building a net zero energy home. I am learning about his worries as a father, about his desire to be a different kind of dad than I was. I am learning about the books he is reading, the music he is listening to, the ideas that are setting his mind on fire. I am, for the first time, getting to know my son, and it is the greatest joy of my life. But it is a joy that is tinged with a profound and unshakable sadness, because I cannot help but think of all the years I missed, all the conversations we could have had, all the dreams we could have shared. I am grateful for the relationship we are building now, but I will always be haunted by the one we could have had, if only I had asked. So, I will say it again, ask the question, and not just once. Make it a regular part of your conversation. What's been on your mind lately? What's the most interesting thing you've learned this week? What are you excited about? What are you scared of? What is your heart telling you to do? Create a space in your relationship where their dreams are not just welcome, but are actively sought out, celebrated, and cherished. Be the person they can tell anything to, not because you will fix it, not because you will approve of it, but because you will love them through it. Be the safe harbor for their soul. That is the job. That is the whole job. I was a good builder. I built a great company, but I failed at my most important project. I failed to build a relationship with my son that was strong enough to hold his dreams. I am trying to rebuild it now, on a new foundation of curiosity, humility, and unconditional love. It is slow, hard work, but it is good work. It is the work of a father who is finally, at 58, learning what it means to be a dad. It is the work of a man who is finally learning that it is never too late to ask the most important question in the world: "Son, what is your dream?" The irony is that I thought I was being a great father. I was providing a level of security and opportunity that my own father, a factory worker, could only have dreamed of. I was breaking the cycle of financial struggle. I was giving my son a head start in life that I had never had, and in my mind, that was the ultimate expression of love. But I was so focused on the material legacy that I completely neglected the emotional one. I was building him a kingdom, but I was forgetting to build him a relationship. And a kingdom without relationship is just a gilded cage. This is a story about dreams, yes, but it is also a story about listening. For 30 years, I was a broadcaster, not a receiver. I was constantly transmitting my own signals, my own plans, my own expectations. I never switched to the receiving channel. I never created the quiet space required to hear the faint signal of my son's own heart. And so he learned to stop broadcasting. He learned that the airwaves were jammed with my own transmission and that there was no room for his. He turned his own volume down, lower and lower, until it was silent, and I, in my deafness, mistook his silence for agreement. The work I am doing now is the work of learning to listen, not just with my ears, but with my heart. It is the work of paying attention to the subtle cues, the hesitations, the things that are not said. It is the work of creating a space so safe that the quietest whispers of his heart feel welcome. It is the work of proving through my actions that I am no longer the benevolent dictator of his future, but a humble and curious student of his present. And it is a work that is never finished. Just last week, he mentioned that he had been volunteering at a local high school, helping out with their history club. The old me would have seen this as a distraction, a waste of time that could be better spent on the business. The new me saw it for what it was, a clue to the man he might have been, a clue to the dream that was still, in some small way, alive in him. And instead of redirecting him, I simply said, "That's amazing, Daniel. Tell me about it." And he did. And for a few precious minutes, I got to see a glimpse of the teacher he might have been. And it was a beautiful, heartbreaking, and profoundly hopeful thing. I am a builder. That will never change. But the project has changed. I am no longer building a business for my son. I am trying, with all the skill and patience I can muster, to rebuild a bridge to him. It is the most challenging and the most rewarding project of my life. And it is a project that is built not with wood and nails, but with questions, with listening, with apologies, and with a love that is, for the first time, truly unconditional. My house is built. Now, I am finally, at 58, learning how to build a home.